Hello guys. Welcome to the story world. We are to serve you best stories, but we need your help to complete our goal of 1,000 subscribers. So find the subscribe button and please click on it. Let's jumping into story. This is not the story of a hero with superpowers. This is not the story of a prince born into wealth. This is the story of a simple boy. A boy who carried the weight of struggles on his shoulders since childhood, yet never gave up. He was born in a small house, in a family where dreams were often too expensive to afford. While other children of his age played with toys, he learned to live with broken ones. While his classmates carried lunchboxes filled with colorful meals, he often carried nothing but water in his bottle. Life taught him early that nothing comes without effort. But instead of breaking him, these struggles shaped him. Every morning before school, he helped his father in small chores. Every evening after school, he did part-time work, earning just enough coins to buy books, to keep studying, to keep dreaming. He was not the topper of his class, but he was the one who never gave up. When others quit because things got hard, he kept going. And slowly, brick by brick, he built a foundation of resilience inside his heart. As the years passed, life tested him again and again. There were nights when he cried silently, not because of failure, but because of exhaustion. There were days when hunger gnawed at his stomach, but his willpower kept him moving forward. And whenever despair whispered in his ears, he answered it with hope. He promised himself one thing. One day, I will not live like this anymore. One day, I will stand strong. One day, I will make my family proud. And that promise became his fuel. By the time he turned 18, he had already worked more jobs than many people work in a lifetime. He had carried bricks at construction sites, served tea at roadside stalls, distributed newspapers at dawn, and cleaned tables at restaurants. Every rupee he earned was a step closer to his dream. And finally, after years of sweat and sleepless nights, he completed his studies. He applied for jobs, and after countless rejections, he finally heard the word that made his eyes wet with joy. Selected. That day, he didn't celebrate with parties or expensive dinners. He simply went home, hugged his parents, and cried, because he knew his journey had just begun. At 24, he was finally stable. He had a modest job in an office. His salary was not huge, but it was enough to live with dignity, enough to send money home, enough to eat without worrying about the next meal. Every morning he woke up early, dressed neatly, and took the train to his office. The train was crowded, noisy, and suffocating at times. But to him, it was a reminder of how far he had come. A reminder that this journey, though ordinary, was his victory. He was not extraordinary. He was not famous. He was simply a boy who refused to surrender to life. But what he didn't know was that life was about to introduce him to someone who would change his routine into memories. Someone who would bring colors into his black and white days. Someone who would show him that love is the sweetest reward for patience. Every morning, the boy's journey began with the same rhythm. The clattering of the train tracks, the sound of vendors calling out their goods, the rush of people squeezing in and out of compartments. To most, this chaos was irritating. But to him, it was familiar, almost comforting. He stood near the window, not because it gave him air, but because it gave him space to breathe, to think. The boy often wondered about his future during those rides. Would life always remain this simple? Would he ever find someone who understood his silence? Would he ever have a partner who walked beside him in this endless journey? He didn't know, but somewhere, deep inside, he carried a hope that someday his life would hold more than just work and routine. And then, that day came. It was a morning like any other. The boy had entered the train, adjusting his bag, holding onto the metal bar as the crowd pushed against him. But suddenly, his eyes caught a scene that made his blood boil. In the corner of the compartment, two men were harassing a young girl. They blocked her way, teased her, laughed at her discomfort. People noticed, but pretended not to. Some looked away, some buried their faces in newspapers, some turned up the volume of their headphones. Because that's how the world often is, silent in the face of wrong. But not him. The boy couldn't stand still. Something inside him refused to ignore it. His childhood struggles had taught him the value of respect, and he could not let someone snatch it away from her. He stepped forward. His voice was firm, louder than the noise of the train. Enough. Leave her alone." The men laughed at first, but when he stood his ground, when his eyes refused to blink, when his fists tightened with courage, the laughter faded. A small scuffle broke out, a few pushes, heated words, but the boy didn't back down. And finally, with the help of a few passengers who gathered courage after seeing him act, the two men got off at the next station, defeated, muttering under their breath. Silence returned to the train, but not the same kind of silence. This silence was heavier, filled with respect. The girl looked at him. Her eyes carried fear, relief, and gratitude all at once. She didn't say much, just a soft, "Thank you." And he simply nodded, as if to say, "You don't need to thank me." It was the right thing to do. They both got down at the same station. The boy thought it was the end of their brief encounter, but life was weaving a story neither of them could see yet. As they walked out of the station, their paths diverged. She went one way, he went the other, and the boy assumed that was it. A stranger he had helped, nothing more. But fate had something extraordinary in store. Later that morning, as the boy sat in his office, sipping tea at his desk, the manager entered with a new recruit. "Everyone, this is our new colleague," the manager announced, and when the boy looked up, his heart skipped a beat. It was her. The same girl from the train. For a moment, time froze. The chaos of the morning, the bravery, the fear in her eyes, the gratitude, all of it came rushing back. She looked around nervously, then her eyes landed on him. Recognition lit up her face, and for the first time that day she smiled. That smile, it wasn't just a smile. It was the beginning of something neither of them had planned. From that day forward, their story truly began. At first it was small gestures. She would greet him with a polite nod. He would hold the lift door open for her. They began sitting together at lunch, sometimes sharing food, sometimes just laughter. The awkwardness of strangers slowly melted into the warmth of friendship. Every morning, without planning it, they began meeting at the station. Their train rides, once silent and lonely, became the highlight of their day. They spoke about everything, from work deadlines to childhood memories, from silly jokes to big dreams. The boy, who once carried the burden of silence, now carried conversations filled with joy. The girl, who had started her job nervously, now had someone who made her feel safe and welcomed. Together, they found comfort in each other's company. And without realizing it, the boy's routine was no longer just about work. It was about her. The way she laughed at her own jokes, the way she frowned when confused, the way her presence made even the crowded train feel spacious. For the first time, he felt something he had never dared to feel before. A feeling stronger than friendship. A feeling that made his heart race every time she looked at him. A feeling that whispered, "Love." And though he tried to hide it, though he told himself to stay patient, his heart knew. Someday, he would tell her. Someday, he would risk it all and confess. Because this girl was no longer just a part of his days. She had become the reason behind his smiles. She had become the dream he never thought he was allowed to have. Little did he know, this was only the beginning. Their bond was about to grow deeper, stronger. And soon he would gather the courage to ask the question that could change his life forever. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months. And in those months, their friendship blossomed into something far more beautiful. The train that once felt crowded and suffocating now felt like a secret world of their own. They would stand near the window, sharing earphones, listening to songs that painted unspoken emotions in the air. Sometimes, they laughed so much that the other passengers couldn't help but smile. Sometimes they sat in silence, comfortable enough to let their eyes do the talking. At the office, they became inseparable. Lunch breaks were no longer lonely. Late hours of work turned lighter when they were together. They supported each other in tasks, celebrated each other's small victories, and consoled each other in moments of stress. For the boy, life had never been this sweet. Every morning, he woke up with excitement. Not just for work, but because he knew she would be there. Her presence made ordinary days extraordinary. Her laughter turned stress into music. Her voice became the melody that played in his heart. But along with happiness came restlessness. Because love is never silent for long. Every time he looked at her, his heart whispered words he couldn't say aloud. Every smile she gave him felt like an invitation. Every shared secret felt like a step closer to something deeper. But fear held him back. Fear of rejection. Fear of losing the friendship that had become his lifeline. Fear that maybe she didn't feel the same. And yet, love is stubborn. It doesn't wait forever. It pushes, it aches, it demands expression. One evening, as the golden light of sunset filled the train, the boy made a decision. It was now or never. The train was less crowded than usual. She sat by the window, her hair dancing with the breeze, her eyes lost in thought. He sat beside her, heart pounding so loud he wondered if others could hear it. He wanted to speak, but words stuck in his throat. He wanted to confess, but fear chained his tongue. Minutes passed in silence. Finally, he took a deep breath, clenched his fists, and whispered her name. She turned, her eyes soft, curious, and he said, with trembling voice, "There's something I've been wanting to tell you." Her brows furrowed slightly. "Tell me," she said gently. He swallowed hard. His throat was dry, his palms were sweating, but he had carried burdens heavier than this all his life. And so, with courage born of love, he finally spoke the truth his heart had been screaming for months. I like you, not just as a friend, more than that. I don't know if you feel the same, but I had to tell you, because every day being with you makes me realize that I don't just want you in my present, I want you in my future too." The words spilled out, shaky but honest. And then, silence. The longest silence of his life. She stared at him, eyes wide. The boy's chest tightened with fear. Had he ruined it? Had he lost her? But then, slowly her lips curved into a smile. Her eyes softened and she whispered, "I was waiting for you to say this." The boy's heart stopped. "What?" he stammered. She laughed lightly, her cheeks pink. "You think I didn't notice? The way you look at me? The way you care? I felt it too. I was just waiting for you to be brave enough to admit it." For a moment, the world disappeared. The train, the noise, the crowd, nothing existed. It was just him and her, two souls who had finally spoken the language of their hearts. The boy smiled, tears almost forming in his eyes, and she rested her head gently on his shoulder. That day, love was born. Not in grand gestures or expensive dinners, not in fairy tale castles or candlelight, but in a crowded train, in the middle of an ordinary evening. Two ordinary people found something extraordinary. From that day forward, their bond deepened. They were no longer just friends. They were partners. They planned their mornings together. They shared dreams during their lunch breaks. They walked side by side after work, laughing under the streetlights, speaking of futures that suddenly didn't feel so uncertain. He began imagining a life with her, a home where her laughter echoed in every corner, a journey where her hand never left his, a future where he could fulfill not only his own dreams, but hers too. For the first time in his life, he dared to dream big. Not about money, not about success, but about love. A love that gave meaning to all the struggles of his past. And in her presence, he learned something precious. That sometimes life rewards patience not with wealth, but with companionship. That sometimes the person you protect one morning can become the person who protects your heart forever. Music swells, romantic and hopeful. Yes, he was in love, deeply. Irrevocably, and he was ready to give this love everything he had. Little did he know, life had other plans he could neither see nor prepare for. Because when happiness shines too brightly, sometimes fate casts its darkest shadows. For a while, life felt perfect. The boy, who once carried loneliness in his pocket, now carried love in his heart. Every morning, the train was filled with laughter. Every evening, the walk back home was filled with stories, dreams, and gentle promises. They planned small things together. Which new cafe to try next week? What movie to watch on Friday? How to decorate their desks with matching plants? And in those little plans, the boy saw something bigger, a future. He often imagined buying her favorite flowers on the day they would marry. He often pictured the ring he would save up for, not expensive, but filled with sincerity. And every time she smiled at him, that dream felt closer, more real. But life has its own way of reminding us how fragile happiness can be. One evening, as the boy waited at their usual train spot, she didn't arrive. Minutes passed, then an hour. His calls went unanswered, his messages stayed unread. Confusion turned into worry. Worry turned into fear, and fear turned into the kind of silence that eats you alive. That night, the boy couldn't sleep. Every sound of his phone made his heart jump. Every thought screamed questions he couldn't answer. Where is she? Is she okay? Why hasn't she called? The next day, the office felt strange. Her chair was empty. Her laughter was missing, and then the news came. She was gone. Taken away by cruel hands, by a cruel world, in a way too sudden, too unfair. The girl who filled his days with light was no longer there. The boy's world collapsed. He didn't cry loudly. He didn't scream. He simply fell silent. Because sometimes pain is so deep, it steals your voice. Everywhere he went, he saw her. On the train, he saw her reflection in the window seat. At the office, he imagined her voice calling his name. At night, he replayed her laughter until it broke him into pieces. Her absence was louder than her presence had ever been. And with each passing day, the boy realized life had taken away more than just a person. It had taken away his dream, his reason to smile, his hope for tomorrow. But in that darkness, a single thought kept him alive. Her memory. He remembered the way she once said, "You think I didn't notice? The way you care?" He remembered her laughter, her trust, her belief in him. And he realized, though she was gone, she had left him something eternal. The strength to keep going. The courage to stand for what's right. The reminder that love is never wasted. So the boy made a silent promise. That he would not let her story end in tragedy. That he would carry her memory with dignity, with love, with purpose. That he would keep standing against wrong, just like he did the day he met her. He went back to the train, back to the station, back to the same office, not because it was easy, but because it was hard, because every step reminded him of her. And in those reminders, she lived again. Sometimes he smiled at the memories. Sometimes he broke down in tears, but always he whispered a silent prayer of gratitude. Gratitude for having met her, even if only for a short while. Because love, true love, is not measured in years, it is measured in moments, and the moments they shared were enough to last a lifetime. So if you're listening to this story, remember, life is unpredictable, happiness is fragile, but kindness, love, and courage, they live forever. Cherish the people who stand by your side, respect those around you, and never wait too long to say what your heart feels. Because tomorrow is never promised, but today you have a chance. A chance to love, a chance to protect, a chance to live fully. The boy's story is not just about loss, it is about the beauty of love, the courage of standing up for what's right, and the truth that even in pain, love leaves behind light. Thanks for listening. Hit the like button if you really like this story, and don't forget to subscribe.